Yes, sir.
I'm Bill Newcap from Morgan County. Thanks for coming today.
Morgan County.
Morgan County, yep.
Neighbor to the east.
We are a good neighbor to the east. Not quite as rich as your county, but we're gaining. You almost kind of touched on my question, and my question is about carbon, because it really kind of looks like, can you hear me? So my question is about carbon, and you talked about cap and trade. So looks like we're headed towards more of a carbon-constrained world. As we head into that world, it looks like maybe the EPA may control the rules and regulations around carbon, or the Department of Agriculture. Which entity within our federal government would you rather control the rules and regulations that come with carbon constraints?
Neither is a good answer.
Yeah. does neither work? I don't know. You know, it doesn't bother me who controls. The issue is what kind of controls that we place on the marketplace. You know, obviously, EPA tends to be more left-leaning than the Department of Agriculture. But I can't say that once we say, okay, Department of Agriculture, you're going to be running, you're going to regulate carbon emissions in this country, that we don't see the Department of Agriculture moving much more in the direction of EPA. So it doesn't really matter what government agency. Hopefully, let's all pray that the government doesn't create a new agency and a new bureaucracy and figure out new ways to tax us to pay for that. But the issue that I have is let's make sure that there is a relationship between carbon emissions and some evil that is being done in this country or in this world, frankly. And I say that because to me there is this perverse mindset that if we don't make Barbie dolls in America, if we go ahead and make Barbie dolls in China, and they produce 10 times the dangerous emissions when they're producing those Barbie dolls, and then we import them here and sell them at Walmart, we're accomplishing something great for the environment. You know, it doesn't make any sense. We have far greater environmental concerns here than our manufacturing competitors in China, India, and other countries. So it would make more sense for us to try to manufacture in this country and to have regulations that are related to the science in this country than it would be for us to send manufacturing jobs overseas and bring those products back here. But I can't tell you that it makes any sense to me whether this economy is brought down by EPA or the Department of Agriculture. It doesn't matter.
Anybody else? Michael.
Good morning. I'm Mike Glass with Holy Cross Electric based out of Colonial Springs. Thanks for coming. Quick question. Would you support a national renewable portfolio standard, and so at what percentage?
Yeah, no and no. You know, I think there is a role for government in creating or incentivizing new technology. And I think that is in, for example, I keep hearing about clean coal technology that is 5 to 10 years away, that will take most of the emissions and being able to put those underground with scrubbers and other things. I hear about other, you know, really interesting technology in whether we move our automobiles from a petroleum-based gasoline to a natural gas, whatever we do. I think the government has a role in trying to figure out where should we go and exploring the technology with the private sector and sort of having grants available to move down in that direction. I think creating artificial markets and raising the prices of energy so that renewables are competitive is a mistake. I think investing in renewable technology makes sense. And so I think there is a difference in those two areas. When we say you've got to buy 10% of your energy through renewables, whether it's wind or solar or hydroelectric or whatever, now the rivers are going to flow, but the wind isn't necessarily going to blow and the sun isn't necessarily going to shine, or at least we'll have clouds blocking out. So we've got to have a redundant source of energy for in capital investment for those renewables. So I think it is, one, inefficient, and two, I think it is a manipulation of the marketplace that the government shouldn't be involved in.
Anybody else? Jack?
Good morning, Mr. Buck. Hi. Jack Snyder from Clear Valley REA, Weld County resident from the town of Severance.
You are safe where you live.
My question is somewhat related as to the CO2 regulation. Would you support limitation on the ability of EPA to regulate CO2 over the next 2 years?
I think it's interesting. The folks in Congress have decided that they don't have the spine to do the right thing with legislation and to face their constituents after doing the right thing. And so they have pushed off to administrative agencies the burden that they will not accept. And I have a huge problem with EPA legislating. You folks are going to hire me, I hope, in November to go back there in January and legislate. I don't want an administrative agency, any administrative agency, engaged in legislating because they're not elected and they're not accountable. And that's the key from my perspective. 2 years from now, you'll have Congress, representatives from Congress coming before you and asking for your support again, and you can decide whether they've done a good job. 6 years from now, you'll have Ken Buck coming before you and asking for your support, and you can decide. But to give administrative agencies the kind of power that they now have, I think is a terrible mistake. It's a mistake in the financial regulation area. It's a mistake in the environmental area. And it's a mistake in a lot of different areas. Government has these agencies are on steroids right now, and we've got to rein them in, and we've got to hold them accountable in Congress for the regulations that they are promulgating.
Yes, Tim Erickson from United Power, Port Lufkin residents. We're safe. Would you discuss your opinions on the initiative 60, 61, and 101? Support or against?
Yeah, I am not taking any position on any of the state initiatives, referendums. As running for federal office, I was the victim of many people from Washington, D.C. and many people from the state of Colorado supporting my opponent, and I am not going to tell voters how to vote on those issues. I think that, I will tell you that I think we have to be very careful when we look at, well, I'll back up, in fairness. When the legislature decides that raising your motor vehicle registration fee is a good idea, and in rural Weld County, those folks, the ranchers and farmers, often have 6, 7, 10 vehicles. Some of those vehicles they use for 2 or 3 months out of the year, and for them to have to pay 2 or 3 times higher fees, that's a tax. And they violated, in my view, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights by doing that. And you are now seeing a reaction to that with 60, 61, and 101. Now, whether those go too far or not, not my place to say right here as a federal candidate. I will say that I think we've got to be very careful in letting that pendulum swing too far back the other way, and reducing taxes to the point where we really won't have the kind of services that we all want and expect in our communities. But I look at it in terms of not just what's going to happen in November, but what's been happening the last 4 years in the legislature and the reaction that the public has to that. I was visiting with some business people and they said to me, well, I said, you know, business should have done more to get into that legislature and fight those fee increases, which are taxes. And they said, oh, we were down there lobbying. And I said, how many millions of dollars will business pour into the effort to defeat 60, 61, and 101? And what kind of effort did they make to defeat those fee increases? So it is frustrating for me as a small government candidate to see what has happened to the Taxpayer Bill of Rights.
Okay, I think that's about all the time we have. I just want to thank Ken for coming out. Just want to let him know that if he's successful in this campaign, he's going to see a lot more of us in Washington and here. And thank you so much for your time. Good luck in your campaign.